Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is true worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Romans 12:1 and 2. Romans 12:1 and 2. Take one.
This strongly makes me think about when he says, brothers, I urge you. And when we're in Christian fellowship or living Christian lives, we yearn for Christian relationships because that's the beauty of it, having more people to grow with, sharing love with strangers, sharing love with your brothers and sisters in Christ.
In the Old Testament, the Israelites, when they would take their sacrifice once a year, their sacrifice had to be spotless and blameless. It couldn't be a sickly animal or a lamb, and it had to be perfect. So that's what God requires of us, to be perfect.
A whole life as a sacrifice for God sounds like a pretty big deal, something that's a little more than what it should be, but in light of what God's done for us, it's nothing, and we owe our lives to God. We can't pay back what God has done for us because it's a free gift, and he offers it to us right there on the table for us to grab. But because of what he's done for us, because of his great love for us, we should be compelled by that love to live for him and to give our lives for him.
And that's something that I struggle with a lot, because I feel like God sends me messages to do things for others and wants me to talk to certain people about him and things like that.
And so just holy just reminds me of light, perfection in Jesus. And I don't think though that any of us could be holy. I think that that's something only God can be in Jesus.
To offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is true worship. When I read that, I was like, wow, if that's true worship, what is our generation doing today? Half of us are too scared to lift our hands up to the Lord, and half of us won't, go to the altar because we're too embarrassed, or, it just seems like, is that holy? Is that pleasing to God?
I think it qualifies as worship as long as your whole heart's in it. Because I know when I'm jumping up and down, singing his name out, my heart's in that.
Addicted to temptation, addicted to sin, falling into sinful desires, lust, alcohol, letting this world completely take you away and blind you of what Christ has to offer. We all have fallen into it. It's getting worse every time. We need to work harder, apply submitting to Christ.
Everything in this world is going to perish. Our money, our house, our clothes, even our looks, our entire body will be gone. So it's like, why even worry about the things of this world when none of it matters? We came into this world with nothing, we're going to leave this world with nothing.
Basically all my life I've tried my hardest to conform and fit in with all my peers, and I've always felt that I've always been out of place because of my height. But now that I've matured and I've established my relationship with God, I understand now that God has made me the way I am for a reason, and not to be selfish because I owe everything to him. The way my body is God's pleasing and perfect will.
But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5.
When he first got saved, he went through all the motions because he didn't grow up in the church, didn't know anything about being a Christian, and so he was more or less just what I would call a fundamentalist Christian. Do it by the book. This is what you're supposed to do. You go to church. You pray before you eat.
It can't just be like this outward change. You can't just start wearing your cross necklace, and you can't, just start cleaning up your act and your look. It's got to be like a change of heart. And when you do that, it makes me think about Matthew 7:13, when it talks about the narrow and wide gates. And it says, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it."
Are you conforming to this world?
Do you think your worship is holy and pleasing to God?
Are you being a living sacrifice for God?
God has done so much for you.
You owe him your life.
What's God's will for you?